Hello and welcome to today's board game design stream extraordinaire. Excited to have you all join us as we come up with some cool new ideas for board games, work on some concepts, flesh out some ideas. Hello, game biologist. Hello, Senior Bob. Great to see you all here today. Hope y'all are having lovely days. I'm having a great day. Started out with some board game design. Board game design, played some board games, played some Dungeon Roll, which is a very fun, fast game. If you haven't gotten a chance to play it yet, I definitely recommend it. It took me a few plays to kind of get into, but once I got the cycle of it, there's a lot of fun stuff going on there, a lot of dice rolling. So very luck-based, but the characters give you some control as well. So definitely one that I would recommend. Senior Bob has subscribed for 3 months. Thank you very much, Senior Bob. Congratulations on your 3-month anniversary. TM Robinson, probably TMP Robinson. Good evening. Hello, great to see you. Is that a temporary Robinson? I see. Temporary. We're just being a Robinson temporarily. Temporarily, and then we will become something else. Alright, so I believe on the Twitters, and I didn't get a chance to look up the pronunciation, so I'm definitely going to pronounce this incorrectly, but Game Biologist had talked about Paxi, probably? Definitely not a donut. Very different from donuts. I mean, they kind of look like donuts to me, but I'm told that it's a completely different thing. I should not confuse the two of them, because that way lies madness. Ponchki? Are you serious? Temporary Robinson says, once I get off the island, I can emerge from my cocoon. Punchki. Wait, are you? I feel like you're messing with me, because that's Punchki. Man, I never would have guessed that from the pronunciation. I guess you learn a little something every day. Sort of like Punchki, but more poo. Punchki. Okay, good. Whatever it is, I want to eat it. It looks delicious, and I want to put it in my face. The rise of fried dough, which is double entendre. Because often, I don't know about punchkis specifically, but for a lot of donuts, I believe they're yeast doughs, and so they rise, right? Yeast donuts. Some donuts are yeast donuts. Yeast dough rises. Cool. For those of you who are joining us for the first time today, tell you a little bit about the stream. So I've got my trusty notebook here with my pen where I'm going to write down ideas and draw things. Also have my in-process design document here. We start from nothing, except for sometimes some inspirations or challenges from the Twitterverse or from previous episodes. And sometimes we'll do mind mapping, or sometimes freeform connect the dots, where we throw ideas out, make a bunch of high-level game potential directions, and then dig down more into particular ones that interest us over the course of the show. If you are a game designer and you're looking for new ideas, feel free to grab anything from what we're working on today. Definitely will never be able to make all the ideas that come up on the show. Many of them lie in wait for a person to take them to fruition, because that's honestly one of the hard parts about design, is taking a game from concept to reality. Here on the show we get to card prototyping sometimes, but for the most part just build out the ideas to the point of prototyping, to the point ideally where we should be able to make a prototype from what we have here. Okay, a little bit more about the punchki, again, which is spelled this way. If you've seen it, you should want to eat that because it sounds delicious. Imagine a yeast donut, but very, very eggy. It should be springy and chewy and filled with wonderful things. Oh my gosh, I want it more than ever now. I don't think I've ever had one of those before. It seems very much my thing, my cuisine. In the core things, the Venn diagram of things that are delicious. Dough, fried, stuff inside. Yeah, this intersection right here, right, the star. It's gonna take me a long time to remember how to spell that correctly. But yeah, the intersection of all things delicious. Punchki are a Fat Tuesday tradition. Okay. Folks would use up the sugar and butter and other rich things in their pantries before having to do without for Lent. That makes sense. Seems a little easier to do the fasting for Lent without being tempted by all those delicious things. And your Bob says, "What's prototyping?" Oh, you know what prototyping is. Prototyping. I want to come up with a funny answer now. What is prototyping? It's like that butterfly meme on the internet. Is this prototyping? Prototyping is that thing you do when you take a piece of paper, a blank piece of paper, and stare at it, or a blank document on your computer and stare at it for 2 hours, and then get distracted by playing Magic the Gathering Arena on your computer and don't move forward on your prototypes. Or you might not. I was like, I should bring up my Deckmeister prototype. Prototyping is a necessary step to board game design, at least in particular, where you get the game physical so you can actually play it with other people and see if it's a good game. Important if you want to potentially publish your game or release it into a wild. If you just think about your games and write words about them all the time, then they'll never be real games unless they're word-based games, like a role-playing game or something. But playing the game is the important part. Okay, I was like, what is this? Moose can fight back. This is from last week. I forgot to get rid of that. It's confusing. This is relevant because I'm co-designing one or more games with my friend Javion, who doesn't have as much experience with game design. We're working on his first game designs, and there's a lot of discussion and like, oh, this is a cool idea. This is a cool idea. It's great to have all sorts of cool ideas, but eventually get them down on paper so you can actually play and test them with people. Egg is a miracle food. I absolutely agree with that. Eggs are amazing. It's vestigial typewritering. I like that. Is it like protozoa? Protozoa? That's like a single-celled organism, right? You could have a whole game where you're trying to create prototype inventions and pitch to the rest of the players. I think that's a great idea. I love that. I'm just going to write that down. I'm going to copy that straight over to our ideas list over here. Metagame. You could, riffing off that idea, you could have a game where you prototype games, or first idea, second idea. A game where you pitch games to play to your game group. Every person has their own hidden criteria. Hidden or public criteria. Criteria. Have to be home by a certain time. Game. Theme preferences. Game mechanic preferences. Get more points for getting more people to agree on games. This would be a fun metagame too, because you could be a very inside joke hobbyist game. Oh, you'd like make punny spin-offs of games. I keep thinking like Wingspan, the tail length. That might be a little too far. Like tail length. Sushi Go, sushi, ramen stop instead of Sushi Go. Actually, Ramen Stop is a good game name. There is the ramen game I remember Nicole Jekic was working on. But Ramen Stop, like a place that you stopped to go get ramen. I like making joke ideas like this. I'm like, oh wait, that could actually be a game. This is funny. How did you come up with a name for your game? Well, I was thinking about punny names for other games. Name first design. I'm telling you, it's a real thing. Stop paying at a bunch of places to get ramen. That's a professional Tozoa. I don't know what that means. And there's para Tozoa. Are these all real things? Because I don't... What's a para Tozoa? Protozoa. Protozoa is like a single-cell organism, right? Single-cell eukaryotes. Legendary Worm says, lyric games can go without prototyping or playtest, but they're special. Yeah. Car games, too. There's definitely a category of games, but in that case... Actually, speaking of which, lyric games. I'm not sure. I'm entirely sure what a lyric game is. Like guessing the lyrics type things. I think there's a lot of games where you don't necessarily have to make a physical prototype, but play testing, like whatever the sense is, even if it's in your head, if it's a rules document. My friend Peter Hayward has taught us this game called French Toast. Very simple rules, car game. You're sitting in a car, sitting around. One person comes up with a concept of a thing, doesn't say what it is, and somebody else will say shoe or reindeer. Literally, it can be anything. And the person who thought up the concept needs to decide whether what was said, reindeer, shoe, whatever, is closer to what they are thinking than French toast. And then they're going to either say French toast, in which case the next person guesses, or reindeer. and then the person who guessed gets to guess again. So, for example, I would never tell you what I was trying to make you guess, but in my head it would be coffee, right? So you're trying to guess coffee, that's my secret word, and you say reindeer or French toast, and I would say French toast, because in my mind I'm thinking, okay, French toast is consumable, coffee is consumable, reindeer is consumable. I've had reindeer jerky, it's actually very delicious, but coffee seems a little bit more, it's a breakfasty thing. So I'd say French toast. Next person would say, like, okay, what's between undisclosed X value? French toast is here, reindeer is here. So you're making this linear organization of concepts. It's really cool and really fun. And for that game, like, we didn't need anything physical, and it's very easily transmittable, but the certain rules that do exist make for a really cool, fun game. And that's something that usually takes a little bit of jockeying around to get just right. Speaking of pitching games to your game group, oh yeah, the Wild New Party game, I saw that, I know, right? The Sitters in Ret. I get that one. You see this? I feel like I'm gonna need to crowdsource this. I love puns, but the pressure of the moment, I can't always come up with good ones. Temporary Robinson says rhyming games, kids in car entertainment. Yeah. A lot of these, yeah, very simple, very elegant games. I love this thing where I'm trying to convince you, you need to get your game to the prototyping stage, you need to play test it. Now people's like, well, you don't necessarily, here's situations in which you don't have the prototype. So that's fair. I appreciate now the question is, what is prototyping? Because prototyping can be a lot of different things depending on the game and depending on how you work as a designer. Because there's also a stage of production to that, and I think a lot of us designers overproduce things. We say, oh, I need to have all the cards and all the powers, where a lot of times just having a few cards, moving things around can very quickly start to prove out your ideas. That's why I say a lot of the things that we come to on the show is a step away from prototyping, not necessarily having the full whole game figured out, but making some pieces, whether that's in your mind, you're making the pieces, or physically in paper, whatever format you're using, sketching in a notebook and kind of playing through the game in your head. Just getting to a point where you can start to make those first iterations. Because it's amazing, even with the simplest of games, how seeing the moving pieces at work can really speed up your development process. This game I was working on today called Deckmeister. It's a memory game. You have the basic concepts of it is you take a card, you put it face down. Next card, you can put it under or over. Next card, you can put it in the middle, anywhere in the stack. You never get to look at your cards again. And at the end of the round, you have to reveal the cards, and they have to be in order. So there's a lot of moving pieces there, and a lot of different things that we've tested for how do you acquire the cards. You have 3 to choose from, you have 1 to choose from, somebody else gives you the card. There's 5 players, 5 cards, each player gets one, so the last person is kind of stuck with something. A lot of different moving pieces there. It's, again, as always, even after doing this for so long, amazes me how simple tweaks make such a big difference. For example, there's goals. Now you have to match symbols as well as numbers. And, oh, that doesn't work with this new draft system that we have. So yeah, getting things real is fun. Legendary Vermin, love the username. Lyric game means a set of rules that's meant to be read rather than played, per se. It's like rules in poem form. Huh. That's really cool. I don't think I've played one of those before. It's an emerging concept in the TTRPG community. That's really cool. I love seeing the innovations that are cropping up in the tabletop role-playing game community. I'll have to do some more research into that. That looks like something I would very much like to play around with. Yeah, Google. It's like so new that Google doesn't know what it is. Yeah, that's really cool. I'm very excited about that. Temporary Robin says, I know someone who had you drafting words to make your own haiku. That looks fun too. Oh my gosh. I love, we've drifted a little bit off of our original inspiration of Punchki. I'm gonna remember how to pronounce this. Might come back to that, but this, I love this concept of simple rule games. Just as a great category, right? Games that don't require you to, say, make a complicated or complex paper prototype. And paper component. So just when I use the term paper prototyping, it's kind of a shorthand for physical prototyping. So that might very well be tokens or tiles. It doesn't necessarily really have to actually physically be paper, but it sets it apart from a digital prototype. It's a term often used for digital games to differentiate making the digital prototype versus the paper prototype. Board games, people usually just make a paper prototype like, oh, well, it's not a paper prototype, it's all meeples. It's physical. It's all the same thing. Alright. Car games, playground games. A set of rules that is meant to be read rather than played, per se. It's like rules in poem form. How to combine baking with words. Edible prototype. There's your Jen Sandercock games right there. Up in a balloon, I watched the landscape go by and ate punchki. Is that a haiku? I can't do haikus. I can't track haikus without looking up the rules for them. I don't have that memorized. I like that though. Watch the landscape go by, ate a punchki. It sounds so lovely and peaceful. And that's a very interesting design constraint too, because we're talking about don't require you to make a complicated prototype. What if the design constraint is a game that can without anything physical. Without cars or tokens, without paper or writing. And for the lyric games, I don't know if that's the way that those are intended to be played, but if it's a rule poem, it's the kind of thing that you could memorize, right? Oral tradition games, right? It's very cool in the way that part of oral tradition is things changing subtly over time. Either by mistake or by choice. You know, especially for very simple games, the French toast game, like, oh, it's so simple. You're never going to make a mistake translating that. But no, I have to think about that, because even when we were discussing and playing this game, I feel there's a couple of variations. Because we played it just going around in a circle, But I think the original way of playing the game was just anyone could yell out the next, like the first person to yell out the next thing. So even there, 2 different variations of the game. And depending on how I had taught it, like I was teaching the circle variation. I said the next person to go around in the circle. But if you are in a car or just hanging out in a line at a show or whatever, and not necessarily in a circle format, how do we track who's the next player? And if someone else wants to hop into the game or wants to leave the game, right? There's a lot of interesting flex there. French toast, car game. Changing how the game is played over time by choosing which rules to pass on. Kind of genetic in that way, right? What gets passed on? What gets left behind? Ooh, which makes me think of another cool design idea. We're all over the place today, but I really like this. Third ideas, fourth probably-ish. Oral tradition, the game. Or something genetic. Very loose ideas right now. On generation to generation, get to choose some things to add or remove. Maybe they're genes, maybe they're words. Add 2 words, remove 1, so it's always growing. So start with beginning. This could be, and this oral tradition game could be an oral tradition. Oh man, interesting. Okay. Start with like beginning. Next person, you could say, or the beginning. Next person adds to it's a beginning. Oh man, this would get a real mind trip without being able to write it down. It's a beginning. Add 2 words. Remove 1. We're at a beginning. We're at ending. Finally. Playing this game right here. Could be an oral story game or written paper game. Paper game, pen, pencil game, pencil and paper. I love this. A recall competition. You could try to trick a person. One thing changed. What is it? Ooh, yeah. Again, that's like the memory game that we're working on. Memory is interesting. I'm excited to be working with it from a design perspective and developing memory in board games. People have a very brutal hatred of memory games. So many people are just, I don't like memory games. Doesn't matter what the game is, just I have it burned, tattooed, branded, that's what I'm looking for, branded into their brain. I don't like memory games. And I think it's just different people had different experiences with those tile flipping games as a kid, like, oh, flip the taco, where's the other taco? Some people loved that and some people hated it, and ever since then, just memory is verboten. So I'm excited to fight against the power and bring that back. Short story poem where each person changes one line but still needs to make sense. Ooh, I like that. Kind of going along with what I was doing. Change it and repeat it. I was working on this. Shoot. I should bring that prototype back. I still have the prototype of, based on the 18 card design challenge bunch I did for having to play the game with just cards in your hand. So you played in line or whatever. And I was making a chanting game where you'd make sets of lyrics and you could turn the cards upside down and they would read different ways. Yeah, trying to repeat what people are saying, remember, add, and change things. Square peg in a round hole. Players try to come up with unconventional solutions to hypothetical problems. I'm going to make that a 5th game idea. I like that. I like that. I love that, actually, because that scene in Apollo 13 where the square peg round hole, if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. That is basically why I decided to become an engineer. Ooh, public facing. Excellent. Thank you so much, Legendary Vermin, for the links there. Very excited to explore some new game things, especially anything that's storytelling, role-playing. There's so much fascinating stuff there that I want to play around with and dig into. Gameout says, I recently picked up Premise. Very interesting storytelling idea. The group tells the story, but each player works independently. Play and pass. Oh, with every player writing simultaneously. Huh. That's really cool. Yeah, anything. Like, even... Because it all comes from the line at a time storytelling. I don't know when that was invented, but I feel like that's been around for a long time. And even before there's paper, I'm sure people were playing an oral version of that ever since storytelling was invented. Man, that's a very interesting question. Oral tradition, line at a time story. Because it could be a fairly recent innovation. It could go either way, right? It could have been in ancient Rome when soldiers were sitting around and bored. They like make up a body story, right? Or it could have been within the last 100 years. Man, I wonder if that's even something that you could research or find out. Because humans love storytelling. Humans are great at storytelling. Historically, there were the storytellers, right? I always like to say everyone's a storyteller. When you come home and talk about how your day at work went, that's a story. I mean, it definitely fits all the criteria of being a story. What you choose to say versus what you choose to lay out, how you frame it, the emotions, the characters. It is a story. But I think a lot of people don't see that or see themselves as storytellers. So people making up fiction or stories, historically, I think fewer people would do that, you know, especially go back to the ancient Neanderthal days or whatever. You'd have the storyteller, the mystic or the shaman or whoever, the person who held on to the histories and the stories. It's a good historical question. I want to know the answers to all these things. Ancient history. The assumption is that some people, especially when it comes to mysticism, spiritualism, because a lot of times the storytellers, the historians were tied up with the spirituality. So there's a barrier to entry there, because a lot of that stuff is siloed, right? That is the mystic. That is our spiritual person. They tell the stories. It could potentially be seen as verboten for other people to tell stories. limited to only special people. Like illustrations of building on each piece. Remember I have that speed dice rolling memory game. I don't remember that actually. I don't think I've seen that one. Premise. Ooh, it's on itch. Nice. I love part of this stream is just me and hopefully you all as well discovering fun and exciting new games. That's half of what we do here is like, oh, it's like this game, and then people are sharing the games they're excited about, which I think is great. I'm very much of the mind that you play as many games, explore as many games, check out as many games as you can, and they all add to your vocabulary. But I got a friend who saw Apollo 13 before her mom did. She tried to talk her mom about the movie. Her mom winked out about not wanting spoilers because she didn't know how the story ended. What? I mean, that's fair. It's like it's you could just look it up on yeah. Homer, related to gods, but not really mystical. Yeah, I mean, and a lot of the oral tradition stories are religious and spiritual in nature. I mean, I'm sad that I don't know more about oral tradition because I think it's a very fascinating subject. But the ones I know, Homer's Odyssey is probably one of the most famous ones. And that was about gods. They're meant, because when you have oral traditions, it's definitely harder to pass on information from generation to generation, getting people to memorize these things. And if someone dies or is lost or killed in a war or whatever, you lose, like, each individual person is so valuable. It takes so much time and effort to memorize those things. So the kinds of things that you pass on are the most important things. And in a lot of cultures, historically, religion was the most important thing. The things we pass on. It sounds like it's probably already the name of a game, but that's a good game name. I like that. The things we pass on. Make it longer. Things we hold. The things we lose. Things we pass on. Maybe it's a series of games. I don't know. Type of story is back to the pseudo donut theme. Okay. You have to collect maple sap to make maple syrup for the special punchki. They have like a maple syrup filling. Oh my gosh. I don't know how or where I'm going to eat these things. I'm just going to be thinking about them and looking for them and not finding them. It's going to be sad. Oh. Her mom was in the late teens or 20s when Apollo 13 actually happened. So like being Gen X and saying you didn't know if Reagan survived the assassination attempt on him. I mean, to be fair, I don't really know that much about historical stuff. I think more and more in our current times, because in the past, historically, everyone would sit down and watch the show. There was one news show and big things were on there. But nowadays, it's just like so many news sources, and we're getting more and more news from all over the world all the time. And so it's hard to keep up. Shortcut to memorization could be things like rhyming, a rhyming story game. Yeah, I like that. I think this could go up with the oral story game. And yeah, having shortcuts to memorizing things is very important, because I'm talking about, again, working on a couple of games that involve memory as a mechanic. And right now we have a queue of numbers, so you're trying to put the numbers in order. It's easier to remember, but the cards also have suits, and we're looking at having to remember the suits as well. And that's like, was it square, triangle, diamond, star? Putting that into your memory banks as a usable piece of data is tough. How do we insert things into our memory banks as useful forms of data? Oh yeah, for what it's worth, the Hebrew Bible, Christian Old Testament is originally an oral tradition. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And I think historically too, history, culture, religion were all very closely tied. You know, the moral stories, all of it was, again, information, so vital from generation to generation, passing things on, like, don't stand outside in a lightning storm, and, you know, be careful about this part of the coast because it's really rocky, and if you bring your boats there, you're gonna die. All of this essential historical storytelling, culture, religion, history, learning stories. Because a lot of it was meant to be educational, any transmitting of information between generations. Is education. I mean, you're giving information. Passing on information is a form of educating someone. And usually you're doing that for a purpose. You know, entertainment can be the purpose. Passing on information for fun, enjoyment. But usually we're going to put so much work into it of repeating it over and over again, and I'm sure they had lots of techniques and stuff. Then there's going to be a weight to an impetus, like a really good reason. Going to all the work of memorizing oral traditions. And like learning stories. History, you know, there was this war, this conflict, all of the subtle messages of something like the Odyssey, you know, and all the different places with the different things were metaphors for, and about conflict and resolution, about family and fealty and loyalty and all the pieces that were wrapped up into that. And you can learn a lot about those old cultures based on those kind of things that they saved and shared. Cool. Which brings me back to game design. You know, you're digging into the weeds here. It's like it all comes back. Yeah, square peg and round hole, oral tradition. So there's this one idea of kind of simple wordplay game, but kind of a more mechanically complex oral tradition game. Oral tradition game. What were the actual techniques of oral tradition? Beyond just rote mnemonics, right? Mnemonics. Hey, I think I actually spelled that right. Memory aids, devices, tools. It would be cool if there were some fun things, or make them up. Right? You could... It's like, if it's not cool enough historically, then we'll just make up things that are cool and fun. It's like memory stones. Visiting the memory tree. Walking a certain number of steps in a circle. I don't know. Could be some fun stuff there. So you picked via Twitter my speed dice rolling memory game. Nice. It's like, I don't remember the memory game. I remember the robot game. I played many games though. So this is my bad, my memory. Inspired by special punch key fillings and unwritten history and seed lip. I don't know what that is. What about each punch key filling having a meaning in the story of your people? Oh my gosh. Oh, wow. Okay, folks, I think you're going to pack it up and go home because this is it. This is the idea. The punch keys, sorry. The punch keys are how we transmit our oral histories. A baked history. Man, can you imagine transmitting your stories through baked goods? And not like hiding a message in the baked good, but oh, this pastry has this meaning. Or like the Tussie Mussy and the flour meanings that we've talked about before. So another version could be, depending on which pastries you give to someone, there's a different meaning. The order they're served tells a tale. At significant events, the history keepers define a new filling and what it means. Oh my gosh. I don't know if that's a game or just a really cool novel, like a story. Is that a game? Or the basis for a fascinating fictional world? Or both? Why not both? Fictional universe. You're a cat. Alright, let's say a 7th game idea. And then the flour meanings, the pastry means, like a cupcake. Well, okay. Yeah, if we're just doing by fillings. So, okay. Yeah, my idea is like a little bit, not totally punchki surfaced, but more for baked goods in general. Cupcakes. Bear claw. Maybe there is a meaning. I'm sure somebody's written down, right? Like, oh, someone brings me a brownie. What does that mean? The chocolate croissant. My favorite. TMP Robinson says, related to memory, Moonwalking with Einstein is a book about a guy learning about memorization and entering memorization contests. Ooh, fun. One of the techniques is a memory palace, which might be a fun thing to put in your game somehow. Ooh, I like that. I think I've heard of this memory palace concept before. I think the idea behind it is all of the things that you're remembering, you're putting them in your brain. You build out this place and you have different rooms, and making associations with all the things. So Memory Palace, we're in the library, and there's shelves of books on there, but instead of books, it's these ideas that are on the shelves. And if you want to go and remember that thing, then you go into the library visualizing this in your head and go up to the one particular shelf, and it improves memory. I like that. Memory Palace is a game mechanic. That's really cool. Legendary says, there's an interesting thing building off Gameologists. You could have a game about teaching a story through a recipe. Oh, Language of Fans. Yeah. Oh, I'm so going to read that thing. I'm going to be in so many different Wikipedia rabbit holes today. What's the significance of each of the ingredients and how they get added, what they represent? Yeah. I like that as a story building or mechanic. Ties into what we talked about a week or two ago about kitchen witches. Making spells through particular ingredients and particular techniques, i.e. stirring clockwise. Giving methods meaning. How you chop, how you stir, how you add the ingredients. Because there's a lot of stuff there where you could just, dump it in, just chop higgledy-piggledy, do whatever, stir it around, but building up rhetoric or a repertoire. System of ways. It's not necessarily the easiest, but most meaningful. Because you can do things in certain ways for different reasons, if that makes sense. Like when I'm cooking, I usually just want to get it over with. I love cooking, but all of the little pieces of it, I just want to do them, get them done, so I can keep things flowing. I like to cook quickly. I mean, even that's interesting. I'm sure, like, oh, who wouldn't want to cook quickly? Even if you enjoy cooking, you want to get to the point where you eat the food, and cooking often takes so long anyways. Just hours and hours sometimes of chopping and stuff, but another way of cooking could be to be very meditative about it and chop very slowly and precisely. Neither are necessarily better. Meditatively. Nailed it. Yeah, definitely want to dig into that. Language of Fans, Language of Flowers, a lot of rich story narrative stuff today. I like that. Cooperative storytelling and food, it's a winner. I know, right? Saying about sidebar, cannolis in theory should be good, but then when I tried such rich chocolate, it made me feel a little nauseated. I'm gonna put cannolis up here with my cupcakes. Yeah. I mean, a lot of things like that, sweets, whatever. I think with cannolis in particular, they're meant to be not super sickly sweets. Good balance. Alright. I'm gonna appease my cat here. It's like I'm thinking and also petting my cat so he stops sticking his claws at parts. How do you come up here and be on TV? I'm gonna see him back there now. Every time I move my chair as if to pick him up, he doesn't want to be snuggled. So he's just going to sit there and look at me expectantly. That's good. As long as you're not putting your claws in me. Okay. Wow. Once again, we've gone wide with ideas today. We got a lot of cool different stuff. Pitching prototypes to players, pitch games to your game group, what game we're going to play, ramen game, a couple of oral tradition, storytelling games, card games, unconventional solutions to hypothetical problems. I like that. Mechanically complex. Like, what are the mind palace? Using a mind palace. And the punchki. Man, that word is so, translate that. The punchki fillings. And having those tell a story. It's like, this one is, if it's chocolate and then vanilla, I don't know what the fillings are, because again, I've never had them. I want them now. Then that means that so you could have it be the story of your people, or it could be fortune telling, so predicting the future based on the punchki fillings. With fortune telling future based on the fillings that you get. Punchki filling divination tarot. Kayla says, I went on Cannoli Quest a few years back. It's not easy to find a good Italian bakery in the Midwest. I miss the ones I grew up with near Boston. There's a lot of bad cannoli out there. Yeah, pastries are tough. You can't just shove sugar in them and make something tasty. Alright. The meanings. You give someone a cupcake. Yeah, play around that. What is cupcakes? Friendship. Brownie. True love. Seduction. Player call. I am going to maul you. That's just terrible. I'm sorry. I apologize. Chocolate croissant is true love, just because I'm biased. I don't know, chocolate and the croissant, it's just butter. It's just a butter delivery device. I guess Memory Palace is a game mechanic. Wonder how that could work. You could have each player has a player board that represents their palace. You're putting tokens or cards face down in the palace. It's like, how am I going to draw a palace? Spire. Just imagine this like crystalline glass and metal sculpture. This is a palace, okay? Palace like a dollhouse style. You can see the inside. You just have all the rooms. For prototyping, make it look pretty in post. That's actually kind of an interesting idea and related to some of the stuff I've been working on lately. So if you have a memorization game, but using the Mind Palace in a physical space, physical game board where you can actually put stuff in there. Draw this out a little bigger. Sure. This is like a kitchen, ballroom, all the fancy rooms and things. Remembering all the fancy names of rooms is actually a little tricky. I was playing a game where you'd choose a category, and then on your turn you had to say an item in your category as fast as possible, or in the other person's category. So, fancy powder room. Like, what kind of rooms do you have in a mansion? Conservatory, library. And then you remember what they are. And presumably it's easier to remember them. They're in a room on your palace board. And I talked a little bit just now about memory and people's tension and hatred. I don't know if that's too strong of a term, but people get really mad when we bring up memory games. It's just kind of a zeitgeist at this point, this dislike of anything involving memory. I think it's like, because it's a very polarizing mechanic. Let's say a memory game is a memory game, like an auction game. This is something that's been discussed on the Ludology podcast before, where if a game, certain mechanics in a game kind of mix and match. If you have worker placement, you can do lots of interesting things with it. Drafting, do lots of things, deck building, lots of cool ways to integrate those into games. But other mechanics, such as auctioning things off, can be tough to not have the whole game, unless you're making a very complicated, very long game. It can be tough not to have the whole game rotate around that and just feel like a next game, like a memory game, because memory is so temporary, short-term memory, and the way most of us use our memories is not a muscle that we really have very well developed, honestly, because we just use devices. We don't have to remember anything. And it requires such focus not have that take over the whole game. And it's really interesting because you want to talk about designing a memory game. It can be helpful to know a little bit about how the memory works, how short-term memory works. You know, you store things in the short-term memory. They go to long-term memory. I have to consider whether I am using my recent watching of the movie Inside Out as my basis for my understanding of how memory works, because it's probably somewhat accurate, but I don't know if it's 100% accurate as a reference for how memory works. But understanding how the brain does memory is a great way to kind of build out this idea of a memory game or inform your memory games. So again, if you have to like memorize a sequence of numbers, you can memorize individual numbers, and some people, a random string of numbers, some people can do better than other people, but at a certain point you are going to fail. There's a limit for everyone for their base untested memory or unadjusted memory. We're talking about the memory palace. People have learned techniques that allow them to remember large quantities of things. But the average person you're going to come across who might play your game has very strict limitations on that. I think for numbers it's 7 or 10. Like, that's why phone numbers are 10 digits long, because that's something people can remember, and chunking things up can help to remember certain things. Back when everyone you knew had the same area code, you never had remembered that part of the phone number, that kind of thing. I think what I'm getting at is playing around with memory games. Can we make memory games, memory board games, be the kind of thing that isn't universally hated? I think there's a lot of fun stuff in there about, like, did I remember that? Did I get that right? And as long as you don't make it too punishing, the reveal, the aha moment can be very fun and exciting. You put things down and have to remember where they are. I think there's ways to tweak that. Again, I'm designing a memory game, so I'm staking my design cred on this idea that there's ways to set things up so it's not as punishing. Making memory. Not everyone hates memory games, like, especially for families and kids. For, like, like, kids, a lot of memory games are kids games too, which again might even further push the dislike of it, for this idea, even not like people who are good at remembering things might not want to do it because they think it's a kid's game sort of thing. But, you know, the one you flip over the tiles, there's a lot of digital implementations of this now where it's like, oh, remember and match the things. There's also the issue about it being yes or no. Like, on off. Very integral. You either remembered it or you didn't. So there's no degrees to it. Some people are just better at remembering things. I would say this is either because they practiced or because they have a brain that works that way. And it was the way some people's brains work, especially with attention deficit, and just like your brain can literally work in such a way, and again, I'm not sure of the technical terms for this, but where it just like does move from thing to thing. I definitely feel sometimes where I'm distracted by something that will take my full attention, and whatever it was is just that was in my brain before is gone forever. That's why I put things in my calendar. I don't try to remember important things because I need to have it written down. So and then there's the thing too, if you're trying to gamify this, have this as a mechanic, you know, the person who just happens to remember all of the things always wins or gets more points. And that's not super fun. And again, this is a very friend of mine because I'm working on a memory game now. So one of the things I've been thinking about is, I don't know, putting distractions in the game, pausing the game, putting the game into such small chunks. Such small chunks that it's okay. putting distractions, pausing the game to such a point where no one can remember. So like, sounds kind of evil too. Someone counts to 10 out loud while you're trying to remember. It sounds kind of like torture, honestly. It can also be, you know, if you're focusing more on it being a fun challenge versus an ortho game where it's all about getting points. So for the numbers memory game that I'm working on, the fun of it comes from the reveal. It's like, did I remember how those things were organizing and did I forget? And more like a personal challenge to try and remember these numbers and the order in it, or your own level of challenge. Like, oh, I just want to get 3. For me, my personal challenge level is just getting 3 numbers in a row. I'll feel accomplished if I get 3. Or just seeing the funny ways in which things came out when you thought they went in one way, and your brain does interesting things with the way that you remember things. It's cool because it kind of reveals the way that your brain works. Like, you think you're going to remember and know the stuff, and then you don't. Or you're like, oh, I thought that was a 67 in my deck, but it was actually a 53. How did that even happen? So putting a lens onto some of the weird stuff our brains do, I think it's kind of fun. So have really short rounds, just so the memory part is evident. A laboratory and observatory. Yeah, just going back on getting good fancy room names. Those are good ones. And conservatory, a lot of Tory ones. In part of the game, we explain the logic of why a thing had belonged to the room they chose. I like that. It's kind of less about the memory aspect. Like we said, lessening some of that memory aspect. It's like a donut. Why you would put that in the bathroom, because it makes you think of the toilet seat or something. That's fun. It was fun. It's funny. I like that. Game Out says, could try actually replicating a memory palace. Have a board showing a palace layout and a deck of cards doing the things you'll place there. Tell the story of why a thing is in a place before you place it there face down. Ooh. Yeah, I like that. The story, telling the story out loud to reinforce the memory. And I'm gonna make sure this is with our memory palace. Yeah. And memory palace, or something adjacent to that, is just a really fun concept. Fun idea. I don't think it's really been played around with before in board games. The Goog says you should have wanted punchki last year because you had a local bakery that made them. They stopped this year? What? No, why do you tell me this? Why do you make me so sad? I'll have to go on a quest. Also, a good game name, Punchki Quest. Punchki Quest. Oh, endgame idea. What are we on? 9? I'm going to put this 7.5, 8. Yeah, I think we're on 9. 9th idea. Going on a quest to get, or another type of pastry. Something that's more easily pronounced. I'm not saying anything against it. I'm just throwing that out there. Oh, man. Maybe in the memory palace? Have to remember where someone put the thing, or just out in the world. Quest for food. Just going on a quest to find something delicious that you really want. I resonate with this game idea. Alright, more walking through the memory palace. Good, good. I like that. Nature themed. Yeah, heck yeah. Cool, nut themed. Squirrel buying different nuts or another animal that caches food. I like that. That is a great idea. You should totally do that. Called the binary brain. Yes, now. Ooh, I love that. ABD ramen. That is very cool. Fun. Binary brain. I think that would be a really good game name. Email just says, could be fun to have modular rooms used to build your palace when you start, so each person's memory palace is meaningful to them. Man, I like that. I like such a weird, different, fun idea. Part of it is building your perfect memory home. Like the rooms you had growing up, the rooms in your fantasy home. Like, I'm really into nooks. I want to build a house that's just like 50 nooks, like just little compartments and secret passages. That can be my whole house. So build your house, and then build your memories. And for this game, I'm feeling a vibe of nostalgia, history, maybe the items you're storing are I want the items to potentially be nostalgic, but not too literal. So I'm thinking you have your memory palace. You're not going to have a tea kettle that just goes in the kitchen. Is not very interesting, right? So maybe you have everything is like a zebra that wouldn't normally go in a house. Or alternately, you could have it be items can't go in certain rooms. So the tea kettle can't go in the kitchen. Because I think, at least for the direction this idea is going, the storytelling aspect, where you have to say why you put something in there, would be kind of boring. It's like, well, the toys are in the kids' room. Sure, you keep the storytelling aspect interesting that way. Cool, I like this. This is some very interesting stuff going on here. Implement a shell game style mechanic. Ooh, I like that. Moving stuff around. Where is it? Where is it? Do you remember where it is? It's weird. I was listening to an episode of Hidden Brain. I don't know what that is. Now I'm going to have to look that up. There's another thing. Talking about memory and super memorizers. Had a list of things. They told you to remember eggs, flour, olive oil, garlic, and pink frosting. It's scary how well the memory can work, and then how poorly it can work sometimes as well. I think it's a fascinating framework for play in games. And that's why I want to delve into this, because I don't think there's enough people working on this kind of thing. And just the tricks our memory can play. Again, working on this game, you put the numbers in order and you're just so sure. Sometimes like, oh, and then that one's a 76. It's like, oh, it's a 64. What? Like, you're convinced. And again, there's like the not the bystander effect, but eyewitnesses for crimes and that kind of thing get into this whole space of how unreliable the human memory is. And the stupid list of ingredients now taking valuable brain space. Can be used for better things, I know, right? Punch key is super easy to say and confusing to spell. Fair. Fair. Totally fair. It's a very super secret agent thing. You can tell people what you want. They'll never realize the storefront sign is the mystery thing you seek. Ooh. It's another game idea. Making 10th game idea. Words that are spelled differently than they sound. Maybe you make up words and make up a completely different pronunciation with a number of similarities, making up your secret agent code. This is cool because we were talking about car games or games you can play without components. This could potentially be one. So make up words like Pontophus. Pontophus. Pronunciation. I guess you would need, if there's a spelling aspect, you would have to have some sort of written components to it. Nostalgia. Old teddy bear. I like that. Very nostalgic. Man, I've been doing this Marie Kondo KonMari system / technique. Where's my memory stuff? And been getting through my stuff here pretty well. We have a bunch of stuffed animals that we've gotten within the last few years that we haven't gotten to yet. I'm very nervous about trying to purge the stuffed animals and see if they spark joy, but I'm more nervous going home to my parents' house. There's just like, I've got a teddy bear. What am I going to do with this teddy bear? It's probably old and moldy. I don't want to pass it on to my kids, but I can't imagine throwing some of that stuff away. It's really weird and super bizarre. Oh yeah, I was going to do this Pontophus. Maybe it's like levels of difficulty for the code. How many, was it morphemes? Segments change. So I just can't. So Pontophus. Potephus. Three segments. So I would spell out that, and you'd have to try and figure out somehow that it was Pontophus. to get the secret delicious treat. I don't know, just riffing on some ideas here. I don't know if that'd be fun or not, but it's an idea. Interesting. Troubled Life of Billy Kerr, game biologist, says players trying to walk through his memory palace. Yeah, I can see that as a description. Maybe you're on a quest to find your childhood favorite toy. Ooh, I like that. This is compelling. And I like this. We're talking from a design perspective about potential mechanic, having memory as a mechanic, but a lot of what we're describing here is like a vibe, you know, a game vibe, game feel. Which games definitely need to be fun. Whoa, that's a big statement. Most games are intended to be fun. And I like to have a fun factor. Like, what is the thing that's compelling? Like, I want to play it again. But the feel or vibe of the game, I think, can have almost equal importance to how fun the game is. Is just, do I want to exist in this game's universe again? Great episode of Brain Games. I went over how fallible the human mind is when it comes to memory. Oh man, so much research. I'm just gonna have to go. This game doc is getting huge. I'm gonna have to go through all of the chats. I'm copying them down, which is great because yeah, I feel researching memory is gonna be integral to the hidden brain thing. Awesome, thank you. Yeah, doing the research for this is really going to help to make it come alive. And doing more research into memory and how the human brain works can potentially help to circumvent some of those frustrations people have with memory games. I'll remember things the way I want to remember them. If you've ever geocached, a big part of the fun is in knowing you're doing something secret. Bystanders are completely unaware. You have to be sneaky without looking sneaky and suspicious. They call folks who don't geocache muggles. You don't want them to cotton on to what you're doing. Yeah, I thought about geocaching for a while. I looked into it. I didn't end up getting into it. I'd still like to try it. It feels the kind of thing that you want to do with someone who knows what they're doing. I know you can look it up online and figure out how to do it from there, but geocaching. Are there geocaching board games? Caching. No, that's not how you spell that. I'm just gonna write that down as an idea. I think that should be a theme for a game because I think that's really cool. Yeah, what I was gonna say about geocaching is I feel it's the kind of thing that you want someone to introduce you to, like going to raves or mushroom picking are also things that are better if you are with an expert who can lead you through the treacherous territory. Just little details of things, like I get the cache, I'm supposed to take something, I'm supposed to leave something in there, write a note. Like there's stickers in there. Are those for me? You know, if there's a candy bar in there, am I supposed to eat it? Is it poisoned? These are the kinds of things I think about when I think about geocaching and doing that. Getting into that. Game idea 11. Oh, I got 11 already. Sorry I didn't get to your comment. So I'll do this 12 then. I'll make yours. I didn't do 12th. 12th. Worms that rhyme with punchki. Smoonch tea? Game is, I have a little stuffed jaguar I received as a gift the Christmas before I was born. Wow, man. And you see, it would be fine. I would be fine if it was like 1 or 2 stuffed animals, but I was big into stuffed animals for my whole childhood. And there's a few from when I was 1 or 2 years old, when I was very young, but throughout my childhood, I got more and more stuffed animals, and there was a whole familial relationship. So the bears, there's multiple bear families, and they're all related to each other, and one is the baby of the other bears, and now they're real things. And now I throw away like the whole family? It's emotionally intense for me. These are the kinds of things that I think about. I'm not thinking about game design. Which could be another game idea, right? Throwing away your... oh my gosh, I'm gonna cry. Throwing away your stuffed animals. Or slightly related topic, choosing what to keep and what to throw away of highly sentimental, nostalgic items. This is interesting. We're talking about game vibe and game feel. When I write this idea down, it feels the same vibe as the Memory Palace nostalgic item game. Potentially wildly different mechanics, but sitting down and play a game. You know, what is the vibe? What is the feel? I think my brain is blanking on the name of this game. I'm gonna be so sad. Japanese road game. Tokaido. Oh my gosh, I can't. Memory, right? I can't handle my brain right now. Tokaido has a very strong vibe of the games that I've played. This is very much, and vibe and theme matching up, which I really appreciate. Going on a walk across the Japanese countryside, stopping at inns, eating the food, painting pictures, visiting the hot springs, and the mechanics reinforce the vibe of having a relaxing journey. Or something like, I don't know, Happy Salmon, has a very upbeat, hectic, chaotic vibe, and the theme of the salmon, I know when I'm getting into that. Or Space Team board game version has a very frantic vibe to it. So I'm a big believer in the vibes of games, separate from theme and from mechanics, just the feel, the universe of it. I don't know, it's hard to put into words. It says, I'm feeling you need to come to Grand Con so I can take you geocaching. That actually sounds really fun. Or I'm gonna have to look up my spreadsheet for when Grand Con is again. I feel like it was at a bad time. Maybe I'm thinking of a different con. Because I want to do that. I'll go geocaching. In pronunciation. So here I was, and my kid's mom was into geocaching until walking through a patch of tall grass thick with ticks. Oh, God. Tokyo Highway, the Japanese road game. Good thought. Good thought. Okay, too many Japanese road games. I love that. How many Japanese road games are there? Still trying to figure out if Transformers reproduce in a way where some kind of genetic code is passed on. Okay. Geocaching at Grand Con. Okay. I'll look at my list again. I'll see what's up with the stuff. Whew. Okay, we are getting near the end of the stream at this point. Just very broad with ideas, game design ideas this time. Hope that all this, as always, is useful. Our shows recently have very much been about ideating, group brainstorming, which I find very fun and useful. Just sitting down here with a bunch of people, throwing out ideas, riffing off of each other's ideas, building out some more formed concepts based on those kinds of things, and hopefully coming up with some ideas that inspire something that you're working on, or maybe give you a new idea for a game. Because I find a lot of the time I don't think I've ever heard someone say an idea and say, oh, that verbatim is going to be the game that I'm going to work on. Usually someone will say something and that will trigger something in my mind where I'll think, oh, if I change this and this and this, that could be something that I personally would be very interested in working on. That's what I hope for this show, is that talking about just world stuff and nature and biology and sociology and all these different things coming together, and then discussing from a game design perspective and how we might mechanize some of those items and play around with being hidden cards or tokens, resources, having it be a lyric game, which we learned about today, which is super cool and I want to dig into. Having it be a card game or a story game or a digital game even. I come half and half from a board game and physical game background, and I think if you have the idea for a game that you're very passionate about, explore the passion for that game and figure out what the best medium would be for it. Maybe it's a medium you're not experienced in. Maybe it is digital, or maybe it's a role-playing game. But you can figure it out. If you care enough about your game idea, you can figure out how to work in that medium. Yeah, so the cards, resources in the Memory Palace seems potentially more traditional board game with a memory component to it. I think going on a quest, the secret languages of Punchki fillings, having a more mechanized oral tradition game where you think about mechanize some of the ideas or techniques that they use for memorization. Wouldn't even have to be oral tradition. Let me come back up to this idea. So many things. There's flower meanings, fortune telling, so many different things here. Square peg in a round hole, oral tradition. Yeah, so taking the actual systems and techniques they use, not just for oral tradition, but modern day memorization techniques, and make that into a fun game. Modern day. So part of this is just coming up with new game ideas that haven't been done before, and part of today's episode has been digging into memory and why isn't memory super used in modern board game design, and how can we break that tradition and make tons more memory games that people will enjoy, get over their dislike of the concept of memory games, and have some fun new things to play. Senior Mom says, I'll just put some game bits in some Tupperware and put it by the river that goes beside the convention center in Grand Rapids. This seems kind of like geocaching. Game says, I've only got 122 finds? What? That sounds like a lot. I've played a lot where they used ammo boxes. That's kind of frowned on in urban locations. Okay. You see, there's like all these details for geocaching that you would know being experienced with it. But you won't necessarily be able to figure that out. I don't want to make any faux pas. Like, what are the geocaching faux pas? I don't want to do this. I don't want to be embarrassed about my bad geocachingness. Okay. There's Cache Me If You Can geocaching game by DPH Games on Amazon. It's kind of a clever name. I think that's the main geocaching board game. Cool. There's 3 caches next to Grand Con. Ooh, fun. It makes me think of real world Pokemon Go. I feel like it's some of the same behavior where you have to go to the locations with the things, like when all the people converged upon Central Park because there's special Pokemon there. Alright, friends. I think we're about at the end of our episode for today. Next week, I will be back on Tuesday for the board game design stream. However, the Thursday stream where we play Magic the Gathering won't be happening because I'll be in PAX East. So if you're going to be in Boston or PAX East, hit me up because I will be there starting sometime tomorrow night. I'll be getting in. Going to PAX East, doing a panel, mostly just hanging out and saying hi to people. Maybe play test my memory game if anyone wants to check that out. If you have anything between now and next week you want to talk about design, hit me up on the Twitterverse. I'm at EmmaLarkins there, here. You can subscribe if you want to be notified about when we go live. If you ever have any questions or suggestions for this show, I definitely want to hear them because I want to make sure that y'all are having as much fun as I am and that this show is useful and valuable and fun and all those great things. So until next time, I am Emma Larkins. Thank you so much for joining my board game design concepts stream. Hope you enjoyed yourself, and I will see you all soon.